Welcome back to another episode of Demystifying Self-Publishing. I'm your host, Alyssa, and today on the podcast, we're sitting down with author Joe Lyons-Rising, whose debut book, Pain Remixed, Navigating Life with Trauma, Grief, Depression, and Anxiety, is already making an incredible impact. Drawing on his own lived experiences of loss, resilience, and healing, Joe has created a work that blends raw, honest storytelling with practical tools for anyone navigating grief, trauma, or mental health challenges. What makes Joe's journey as an author especially unique is that all proceeds from Pain Remixed are donated to the Season Center for Grieving Children, ensuring that every copy sold helps support kids and families through some of life's most difficult moments. Welcome to the podcast today, Joe.
Thanks so much, Alyssa, for having me. It's really great to be here today.
Absolutely. I would love to kick things off by chatting about the inspiration behind your book, Pain Remixed, and when you first knew that your story was ready to be told.
First idea I had to write a book was actually probably, I'm going to age myself here, so at least 26 years ago,
Okay.
27 years ago when I was in, I think, second year university. So I went to Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo. And I think that maybe it's maturity, being away, having time to really reflect on what I'd been through my childhood, losing both my parents to suicide as a kid at age 6 and 10, everything I'd gone to, I actually started to really appreciate, like seriously appreciate where I was. And I just felt this, I don't know, this need to help other people share my story. And maybe there's other people that have gone through similar experiences and loss and mental health challenges, and maybe sharing my story could help their journey. But I had no idea how to write a book. I did take English courses on top of my economics and business courses in university, because I always had an interest in literature, aside from my love of math and data and business. So, and I used to write a little bit of poetry here and there, which was really amateur. But yeah, I think that's when I first got the inspiration. But I didn't start writing the book probably about almost 9 years ago, just after our second daughter, Grace, was born.
And where did that pivot happen from ideation to actually deciding to sit down and put fingers to keyboard or pen to paper?
Really, I think it came out of the fact that, so I had gone through a really difficult separation, divorce, my first marriage, gone through a really difficult time mentally, transitioning out of that through therapy. But then this beautiful gift that is my wife, Carly, I met her, and my life just completely did a 360 in a most beautiful, incredible way. And I think that I had these ideas from university how to write this book. All this life experience happened, good and bad, but I just felt there was this like really incredible moment happening where I was really, able to live my dreams of having a family, being loved and supported unconditionally. Plus, I would talk about it quite a bit with my wife Carly, since we first started dating, about how I always thought about writing a book. I think I just had felt like I'm done talking about it. I'm just going to go and write. And I just wrote a story. I wasn't even thinking at that time that I was just going to start writing this whole novel. I had this whole plan. I just wrote a story. And because mine is a, hybrid self-help memoir, I really wrote the memoir stories first.
And did you feel that you needed to get to a certain point in your own healing journey before you could share those stories with the world, or did you find the writing process to be equally as cathartic?
I mean, I would say it's both, but I do feel that even if I had written the book but didn't have the therapy in place that I was going through, or all the unconditional support just in my home. You know, my wife and our my stepdaughter Ella, like some of the biggest fans of the
Mm,
book, biggest supporters. And one of the things I just love to do, because I didn't even know at first if I was going to publish it.
right.
Right, I just started to write it, and every time I would go and write for 2 or 3 hours, I love writing it early in the morning. And I think at that time, because I was working in corporate, I'd write on Sunday mornings, and I couldn't wait to share what I wrote with her.
Mm,
And so I'd come upstairs from my office in the basement, and I would read it to her. And oftentimes we would both be in tears, and we'd hug afterwards, and it was like this beautiful moment. And that part was incredible therapy. And she felt that even though she knew me very well, she was continuing to learn things about me and my life, my story.
yeah, absolutely. It's incredible to have that support network kind of guiding you through that process. You know, we chat with a lot of authors who don't end up sharing their work until it's published, or, you know, their siblings don't even realize some of the grief or the trauma that they've experienced until they're faced with this physical copy of the book. So the fact that she was able to kind of provide you with that support through your writing journey is really amazing as well.
Honestly, I could not have done it without her. And, as most writers can attest, it's kind of similar to being an entrepreneur, which I have been for the past 5 years, is that you kind of go through these ups and downs where you're questioning yourself. Am I a writer? You have like a imposter syndrome, especially first time writer. Is
Yeah.
my writing good enough? People going to enjoy reading this? And then if you're thinking of however you're trying to get it published, what's the reception going to be like? So you have to get over yourself as your worst critic.
Mm,
And probably I think like ourselves, like we're our worst barrier. Um, but that's why it's just beautiful if you can just write, not think about the final product.
yeah, absolutely.
So allow yourself to be creative without editing as you go. Like just, if you want to write a bunch of, it doesn't need to be great. It's just, but it's the, especially if you're writing nonfiction or if you're writing memoir, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
all coming like from the heart and the mind. And that's the part that no one else can write that story.
Exactly. Exactly. I think also, you know, one thing that we say a lot is to just get that first draft out. Just get the first draft out and on the page. And from there, things can be refined and reworked if needed. But it's freeing, I think, in some ways to finally have that pouring out of you from your heart, from your mind onto paper, and to then be able to kind of process and work through the stories that have really kind of come through that experience. So you've mentioned that this book is equal parts memoir and self-help. And through that, you balance honest storytelling with practical advice in the book. How did you decide what to share from your personal experience versus what would serve the reader most?
So there are many iterations of my book. And I
Mm,
would say that actually the first full iteration that includes a full manuscript edited was just a memoir.
mm,
That's what I wrote first, probably in the first 6 years. I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a memoir. I'm going to release it as a memoir. So I was all about memoir. I read tons of different like how-to memoir books. I actually took memoir writing courses during 2021 during the pandemic, and just immersed myself in reading other memoirs and learning the craft. And I did pitch it to two of the largest publishers in Canada. And I was fortunate to have a direct contact to even have them read it within 4 or 5 weeks is kind of unheard of. I was so fortunate for that. Um, and their feedback was so helpful. It basically said, book's great, story's great. Obviously some things to tweak. I'm a first time writer. However, pretty much, you know, every celebrity or so many celebrities released incredible memoirs during the pandemic,
mm,
right? Because People were at home. People had time. And I was consuming all those memoirs. I loved them. I was reading them. I'm an audio book fan, so I was listening to them. And my platform can't compete with someone with 2 million followers and those types of things, right? So these top publishers are getting inundated with these incredible memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
So it really allowed me to take a step back and kind of reevaluate, like, what are my goals with this book?
Right.
Right? Is it all about being on a top publisher? It starts to feel a little more ego driven
Mm.
than what my purpose is, which is to get the information out, the story out, to maybe help one person.
Right.
And so that's why I loved working with Tellwell. And I totally flipped my mindset of, wow, I could work with an assisted self-publisher. I could be super creative. And then what I also did was I shared my memoir, my first memoir, fully edited, with every single family member,
Mm.
because I've lost so many people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was not going to lose our relationship over my book,
Right.
and I've seen that with celebrities and tell-all books. This was not going to be a tell-all. Parts of my story are critically important to share. But, when I got feedback, there were certain pieces of detail that certain family members were like, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with this,
Right.
and it can be tough because you've been writing it for 6 years. But that also allowed me to, dial up my empathy more, to say my relationship with that person is way more important than this extra detail,
Right.
you know? And I don't know if even that extra detail is going to make or break the success of the book.
Mm.
But if it's going to make this person feel bad or uncomfortable, I'm going to take it out. So let's say I wrote a book with about 70,000 words, fully edited with an editor. It was, sent to these different publishers. I probably used about half of those, let's say, words. Obviously, I had to edit and make it work with this new book. But that book was different. That book was called Left Behind,
Mm.
which has a totally different tone to it and vibe. And some of the feedback that I had received from family was that they always felt my story was a really uplifting one
Right.
and unique and positive, and my love of music and DJing and humor and things like that. And honestly, it was a lot for me to even just say, okay, I'm basically going to write a new-ish book, because I did two years of research after that, um, going through all the different mental health sections that I cover in terms of like trauma, grief, depression, anxiety, suicide, loss. But I really enjoyed it. Especially I really enjoy neuroscience. And so that was a whole other piece of research that I've included and tried to educate from the self-help standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one thing that's ringing true for me here, in a previous conversation with another author, Elaine Alec, she chatted about writing from the scar as opposed to writing from the wound. And so you're chatting a little bit about this initial draft that you had, and after sharing it with family and maybe the tone of it, that process for you and writing and reading with your wife, Carly, and, having that really cathartic and healing experience perhaps was more what she would refer to as writing from the wound. And then now moving through that and having those conversations with family and hearing their perspective of your story being so uplifting and you being so inspiring, and revisiting it and reworking it in a way that is demonstrative of that, is maybe more writing from the scar. And so I think it's really fascinating to hear the process that you went through of working through that initial draft and how it then came to be what we know it as today. Now, writing about grief and trauma can, of course, be emotionally taxing. What would you say was the hardest part of translating that lived experience into words on a page?
I actually found that part, I wouldn't say like easy, but it flowed differently.
Mm.
So I'm someone that those those kind of like deep emotional stories, I had to set up a certain environment for me to write in.
Mm.
And I wrote most of my book in like through the fall and winter, like early mornings. I liked writing when it was dark by candlelight. Lighting
Mm.
was really important. I would have some type of like kind of background playlist, like very like instrumental. I think it was called like sleep playlist by Spotify, something like that. That it basically just brought me into those scenes,
Mm.
and it really is a state of flow. I
Mm-hmm.
would lose complete track of time when I was writing.
Almost meditative, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think, well, what I've learned is that it also allows me to tap into the deep memories,
Mm.
because I'm talking about memories that are 40 years old.
Right.
And so there were times where I was just like actually huddled with a blanket around me in front of a fireplace, like in our basement, with my laptop, like in the dark by candlelight, writing those things, just crying,
Mm.
and getting it out. And I've been to a lot of different types of therapy over my life. This was a very unique one, very personal, and it was incredible. It actually was, like, yeah, I had to rip the Band-Aid off over and over, but there was things I still needed to process, and writing it is an incredible way to to do that, and then to share it with Carly afterwards. Those two things, like, kind of made me like okay with sharing it with others. Her reception was so important
Mm.
to what I was sharing, right? So everything was based on, is she okay with it? Because I so value her feedback, and she's so caring and loving. Um, so yeah, those two things, and that's why I encourage other people as part of their mental health toolkit, is if you can write anything. It doesn't have to be a book. It could be journal entries, it could be poetry, just little notes. Um, Along the way, I would write notes to myself in bed all the time as I was thinking of ideas for the book. Sometimes they were just phrases. And so I encourage other people to do that. It really helps kind of get that, all that heaviness you're holding
Mm.
throughout your body, and you can put it somewhere.
Right.
Because those are the loops we get trapped in, is we're overanalyzing these scenes, these situations, these feelings. But it's different. Like, once you have it written on a page, it's almost like you stopped a loop, and
Mm.
now it's somewhere else.
Right. It's living somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very powerful. And I think a lot of people use writing as part of their own healing process. And so hearing the different ways that it impacts different authors is really interesting, I think. Now, you had mentioned that you during the pandemic had pitched the book to a couple of publishers. Of course, there were other amazing memoirs and manuscripts that were coming through at the same time. And that tends to be a common theme with traditional publishers. You can provide the most amazing manuscript, and it's very much about timing and a little bit of luck and maybe, what is in demand in terms of the genre or the market at the time. And so I would love to chat a little bit about that shift in perspective that you chatted about when you realized it's not so much about having the backing of a traditional publisher as it is getting the information into the hands of somebody who could really be impacted by it. So, what has that self publishing journey looked like for you? Hey, listeners. If you've been enjoying the show, I'd love it if you'd take a moment to leave a quick review. It helps more writers discover the podcast and lets us know what you'd like to see more of. Your words matter on the page and in the reviews. Thanks for supporting our community.
It turned out to be the best decision that I've made with this book, because it was very freeing.
Mm.
It allowed me to do a lot of unique creative things that were really true to my core and my values. So the biggest one is having 100% ownership of the book royalties.
Right.
So that was
Right.
something that I never thought about with traditional publishers. Traditional publishers, it's about volume.
Mm-hmm.
It's a volume play. You might make a dollar or two per book for royalties. And I was already planning to donate 25% of that, just like we've been doing with our social enterprise, to Season Center.
Right.
So in terms of impact, it takes a while, right? With our business, it's been incredible. We've donated $130,000 to date through
That's
Seasons.
incredible.
But in terms of a dollar or two per book, that's a lot of books to be sold.
Mm.
My goal is obviously not just to donate over $100,000. I'm realistic in terms of book sales and whatnot, being a first time author. But my goal was to donate $1,600, because that's the average cost of putting one child through the program.
Mm.
It's a free peer-to-peer grief program. Once I thought about, was on board with doing the assisted self-publishing, because I wanted to get my book in a place where it was as close to being at one of those large publishers, but it had this really valuable and I think like emotional connection from a grassroots perspective.
Mm.
And really that's been how we've been building our business. Data Gives Back. So I just kind of thought, well, we've had great success with our business doing this, and all these incredible supporters that show up from our business and the volunteer work I do with Season Center. Why couldn't we do this for the book? Right? Even if I sold a couple hundred copies, if I donate 100% of the royalties, that has a huge impact.
Right.
Because every book is about, depending on the channel, $5 to $7 is a royalty getting donated to Season Center. And so it also took some pressure off me that I wasn't, trying to sell thousands of books.
Mm.
And it was going to have, every book was going to have some impact. And also the reader now is going to feel what I've been feeling of giving back, even just in a little bit of a way. So even if
Right.
they don't like the book, okay, they've already helped these kids.
Right.
And I do talk about giving back as something I've really learned in the past, 5-7 years, about how powerful that is for our mental health,
Mm.
and how a great feeling. So that was one of the main things, because it's very rare, to have 100% control of the royalties. That does not happen with traditional publishing, obviously.
Absolutely. Well, between royalties and even the creative control, I mean, you
Yes.
chat about the fact that it is both memoir and self-help book, so a very unique kind of perspective from a book standpoint. And I imagine there would have been a little bit of perhaps pushback from a traditional publisher, and with something so vastly personal and something that you have spent so much time working through, being able to have the final say at the end of the day is so important.
Yeah, and speaking of the creative piece, just even designing
Mm-hmm.
on cover, the majority of this I designed in Canva,
Mm-hmm.
but then I kind of have like my core kind of group of friends, advisors, people that I rely on, people that are in PR, publishing, and authors, gave me some great feedback for tweaks. So when I shared this design with Tellwell, it was a great process, because I just took it to the next level of
Right.
professionalism. And I've received such great feedback on the cover design, because it really is me. It's my
Mm-hmm.
story. And in the original version, I really wasn't bringing in this uniqueness that I had been a DJ, amateur music producer, and how much music is a healing force for me. So then I just went full on with that, right? I made every chapter is a different record.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like record one, record through all the way through the book, and every record or chapter has a music lyric,
Yeah.
right? That ties that in. And so, there's lots of cool things. There's analogies, music analogies, references, some stories about my DJing and producing experience. It just allowed me to have the really unique take on mental health. I think that's what's different about my book, is that you don't see too many books, like mental health books like this,
Yeah.
on topics like suicide, loss, and grief and anxiety and depression. And so I'm thrilled the way that working with Tellwell allowed me to be creative, have these ideas, even within the book, some of the design. I created a Spotify playlist with all the songs I included for the lyrics.
Yeah.
So there's a QR code at the end. That was feedback from another author. So it's kind of similar to how I built my business as a creative. And I just get all this great feedback.
I was going to say that something that you had mentioned towards the top of the episode was that being an author is very similar to being an entrepreneur. And I think that you really hit the nail on the head here, going through the way that you've customized this book in a way that it very much feels like its own brand. It has you very immersed within it. So I think that that's really a cool thing as well.
Well, and I didn't really expect for this to happen, but with the success of the book, becoming a bestseller in the first week in 4 different categories on Amazon, and our business was focused on corporate training. I launched a Pain Remix corporate mental health workshop series. And it's been very successful. And it is definitely a dream come true to bring my 2 passions together, multiple passions, really, writing, mental health, training. And so now I'm working with groups of 60, 100 people. And some of them are already existing corporate clients, many new clients, because now I'm working with a lot of different industries. But one of the coolest things is that in those workshops, I usually include a copy of the book. And afterwards, I usually stick around, do some extra signing. And that's where you start to get these really great conversations with employees, which I really value. And in some cases, you're building relationships with people because they want to share. And I worked in corporate for 16 years, so I can really empathize what they're going through. So that's, again, I think it's kind of like being open. Yeah. Like a entrepreneur, a brand. Because I do some music production, I pitched a kind of wild idea to these producers in the UK to collaborate on a track, and it became an EP. So an EP, like 2 tracks, and the EP was called Pain Remixed. So then the EP, there were 2 songs, and they surprised me. They got it pressed to vinyl as a nice surprise. Like, they told me about it in December. So I actually have downstairs, where we have our vintage record cabinet and stuff, I have a couple vinyl copies of Pain Remix, the record.
That is so
cool. Which is super cool, yeah. So I even did a book signing event where there was a music and bookstore in Ayr, Ontario, and I got to control all the vinyl all day. I got to pick from all my favorite, records from the 60s to today. And the owner, she actually bought a copy of my record and she played it in the store. So it was really cool.
That's super cool. And it's so funny because, one thing that I love about being able to have these conversations is you learn different tidbits about the people behind the books and that kind of thing. And you mentioned Ayr, Ontario. My husband actually works within that community. So
amazing.
We're in a very small southwestern Ontario community here.
Yeah.
And we chat with authors globally. And so it's always neat when I hear familiar places and we have those connections. But I wanted to get back to that idea of authorpreneurship. I think a lot of people who get into writing have the eventual goal to use their book to inspire others or pivot into different business ideas. So you mentioned that you had this book that you kind of married with your own business to host these different workshops and things like that. Are there specific tactics or platforms that you found to be most successful in marketing the book to the more business oriented side of things versus the average reader of the book?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I've learned the most in the past 5 years, where I quit my corporate director role and started our company Data Gets Back, was around social media work on LinkedIn. And previously, I was using LinkedIn kind of just bare bones. If I was looking to, usually I was looking to hire people. Um, and I actually hadn't been looking for work for a long time. I've been fortunate in my career to kind of be, um, kind of asked to move into different roles and things like that. So I wasn't using it a ton. I think I had maybe less than 1,000 followers. And one of the things I learned, even like I was actually writing Pain Remixed before I launched it, was to really start to be comfortable to share my story,
Mm.
because Data Gives Back. Yes, we do corporate training, but at the end of the day, we donate a good size amount of our revenue to Season Center for Grieving Children, and I'm an executive grief ambassador for Season Center. So I started to share my story. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that when I was in corporate, but all of a sudden I was like free as an entrepreneur. So I was sharing my story, and all of a sudden I was connecting with other people working in suicide prevention, suicide loss, mental health. Um, and I didn't really do it for any other reason than just it allowed people to understand why our values were so important in our business, and why we were running a unique social enterprise, why we're called Data Gives Back,
Mm.
all this kind of stuff. And then I also had the ability to create awareness for the center. Um, so I think that that's the one difference, is that LinkedIn is not this really structured corporate space as it
Mm.
once was. And the amount of users on there grew exponentially through the pandemic. And it's become like I call it like the storefront of our business, because I'm based at home.
Wow. Yeah.
I've been fortunate. I think I now have about 15,000 followers, and I'm regularly, connecting with people, and then I end up meeting them like in person at other events and things. Um, and so I'm not pitchy. I'm not trying to sell stuff when I post. I kind of do a mix of business stuff, mental health, and I do some funny, really bad dad joke stuff on Fridays. So, I would say that is one thing, and I think less than 1% of the users on LinkedIn actually post, and post regularly. And so I've probably been posting 3 to 5 times a week for the past 5 years on there. So when I posted about Pain Remixed, I was posting my writing journey for years.
Right.
I was sharing that, and I was even sharing like when I thought it was going to be ready or published, and then that journey as well. Well, it kind of mimics a lot of entrepreneurs on LinkedIn are sharing their journeys today,
Mm.
and even their mental health struggles with that. And I love that. Obviously, now as someone that's doing mental health training for corporate, um, I'm so happy to see that. So LinkedIn's very unique that way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of kind of junk and crap that comes up, unfortunately, in the meta, like in Instagram and
Mm.
Facebook. Uh,
Very saturated as
yeah.
well, as you mentioned. Less than 1% of people on LinkedIn are regularly posting.
So, and yeah, you don't have the celebrity influencers typically on LinkedIn and those types of things. So I was able to build relationships with people. And if I felt comfortable enough, I was sharing, even DMs and things with my book when it launched, based on those relationships.
Mm.
I felt like I just had a third child when the book came out. So I wanted to share it
Mm.
with people and let them know, not in a pushy way, just, hey, here's this book I'm incredibly proud of. So I think that is unique, and it can be very professional. That's the nice thing. People know who you are. They see your picture. They see your background. They know you're not like a random bot.
Mm.
And you've built that kind of trust with your posts and stuff like that. So that's one thing I would recommend for writers, because you do have to be in an entrepreneur mindset.
Definitely.
Even if you're with a big publisher, you're going to be doing all the heavy lifting of the marketing and PR. Maybe you're going to go
Mm-hmm.
on a roadshow for a week or two when it launches, but the rest of it's on you. And so I was, again, fortunate to learn that from other authors. One author, one of my best friends, Nina Purewell, she wrote the international bestseller, Let That Shit Go.
Mm.
I learned so much from her, and so happy that she's the top quote on the front cover. Her and I are co-executive grief ambassadors, and now I'm coaching on her team. So, and we have another team member that's a new author, self-published. So I think that, yeah, treating it like a business. And if you don't know, ask other people.
Mm.
There's lots of other authors like myself and small business owners that would love to help.
Absolutely. It's so powerful when people come together and are willing to collaborate and share their experience and know that there is the opportunity for that community and collaboration instead of viewing it through a competitive lens. I think that there is room for everybody, and especially with the different genres and subject matter, it's always inspiring when people kind of come together in that way.
I've had a great experience creating relationships with other Tellwell authors,
Mm,
and very open to help each other and check in and
absolutely.
support, so those are people that are regularly, liking and commenting on my posts, sharing stuff. I'm doing the same with them, and we're DMing. I've had calls with people, because there's also like a vast amount of experience of authors that have released like many books.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, and they've done really cool creative, like, launch events, activations, theme stuff, giveaways. I'm like constantly learning. Like, this is a whole new journey for me,
Hmm.
different type of entrepreneur, like product launch. Um, but I also treated it like a product launch. Like I was working still in the consumer packaged goods industry where my background is. So, how would you launch that? It's a micro launch. How would you launch that? How would you support it? From different types of marketing, supply chain, all that kind of stuff.
Like you said, it comes back to that entrepreneurship, that entrepreneur mindset, and also incorporating your own experience into the process, which really allows for that brand to feel very cohesive and very you. And at the end of the day, people support people, they support authenticity, and you being vulnerable and sharing your story through LinkedIn posts and the journey there, I think is really a testament to the success of that.
And like I said, it took me 8 years,
Mm,
right? And I've been telling people to keep them on the journey, incredible support. So it's almost like, yeah, like being pregnant for 8 years. Then people are so excited when you give birth to this book. And I saw that in droves.
mm,
People came out everywhere, and I've been blessed from, yeah, these different communities I've been part of for years, whether it's the business community, friends, family, school, alumni, and then this music community has been super cool because it's a global community I've been part of for decades.
mm.
Um, and it's been, again, like I said, I've been open to creative ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even for I've been DJing locally in some events where I sponsor in kind my DJ services, and it helps me promote my book. And I've been doing book signings while I DJ.
Yeah, that's a very unique perspective. And again, you chatted about the innovative ways that people are getting their product out there and launching it,
Yeah.
and yeah, just making it your own and having fun with it, I think is so important to do. Now, beyond this book, what projects or goals are you most excited about in the coming years?
Well, I do have another book that I'm
Mm.
started writing. I can't say anything other than that right now. And I did tell Carly that I wouldn't start writing because I was writing for a long time.
Yeah.
For a long time, I would take 2025 to, you know, um, fully support Pain Remixed, everything we're doing. But I'm really excited to start writing in the new year. I don't think it's going to take me 8 years because I've learned quite a bit to write a bit quicker and go through the process. But so that one I'm excited about. Yeah, we are with this collaboration I was telling you with Nina Purewell,
Hmm.
and this other new author, Janie Brown. She released a book called Fear to Fierce, where all three authors were coming together to launch a new men's mental health workshop called Dudes Don't Feel.
I love that.
And so we've been working on that for many months. This is maybe the first public time we're really talking about it, but we have been talking behind the scenes, different clients and whatnot.
Mm,
Nina lost her dad as well to suicide.
mm,
The three of us just, you know, uh, the numbers, the stats are staggering. You know,
right.
3 out of 4 completed suicides are men. And I know firsthand from just my own experience, the men around in my life, we don't um we don't express it the same way that women do, or in a healthy manner. And unfortunately that's leading to this higher level of depression, anxiety, and areas that we're trying to break down those stigmas
Mm,
of this, masculinity, all these types of things. So that's one key thing. Yeah. That I
amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it will be hugely impactful and help so many people going through their own struggles, or even maybe getting ahead of encountering those kinds of mental
Yes.
health struggles.
Yeah, that proactive idea is what I really push,
Mm,
or I call it maintenance,
yeah, yeah.
where most people hopefully are getting annual checkups to their family doctor or working with specialists, but we need to have that same mindset for mental health.
Mm,
If someone
absolutely.
shouldn't feel stigmatized because they're going to therapy, like, oh, like what's wrong with you? It's like, well, I'm a human being. And
Absolutely.
life is complex,
Yeah.
and my mental health is just as important, if not at times more important than our physical health.
Hmm.
So why shouldn't I be going to see a therapist at least once a year, a couple times?
Definitely.
Use your benefits that
Hmm.
people have, and there's different types of free therapy or paid. So I talk about that quite often, and that is that proactive approach you're talking about. You don't have to wait till there's a crisis to go talk to someone.
Definitely. Well, thank you again for sharing that and for having this conversation with me. I just have one more question. It is from our user submitted segment, The Plot Thickens, where I post to our stories on Instagram asking for people to submit any questions that they might have for that week's guest. So, for those listening, if you aren't yet following us, be sure to check us out at Tellwell Publishing. What has been the most meaningful response that you've received from a reader of Pain Remixed?
That's a really great question. It's hard because there's been many.
Mm,
Their formal, replies on different platforms like Amazon, and I think that one of the experiences that has happened, like there's been so many. There's one where I got to have an interview on a podcast with Nina. Nina was the guest. She included me as her plus one on a podcast called the My Legacy podcast. Um, and it's hosted by Martin Luther King III,
mm,
his wife Andrea Waters King, and Mark and Craig Kilberger. And we did the podcast from Stouffville to their studio in Atlanta. And I was starstruck like royalty. Here I am in front of the eldest son of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King. And he asked my opinion on men and mental health.
wow.
So that one will always stay with me
Mm,
the rest of my life. I did study civil rights movement, Dr. King's work in high school. So that one I never thought would happen when I started this work. So there are many different stories people have shared, and I'm so appreciative.
mm.
That one to me really stands out as incredibly special.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine the level of starstruck you would have felt in that moment. And to have your opinion asked about such a huge topic and by somebody who is so immersed within a wide variety of lived experiences as well. I can't even imagine the impact that would have had on you. Well, thank you so much again, Joe, for joining me for this conversation. For those listening, where can they find your book, information about your next journey or chapters?
So you can check out my website, painremixed.com. Has information about the book and links to some of the main sites to purchase that. In Canada, Amazon.ca, Indigo, online are the two best online platforms. I do have some great support from independent bookstores, Blue Heron Books in Uxbridge, and Music and Books and Air. And check out your local independent. There's a lot of independent bookstores have my book for order. So if you want to order it from your bookstore, check out their website, Pain Remixed. And many people have told me they've ordered their book and picked it up from their local independent.
Very cool. Thank you to everybody listening. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, or catch the full video on YouTube. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.